Have you ever had one of those nights?
Oh, absolutely.
You know exactly the kind I'm talking about. It's 3 a.m., the house is dead quiet,
Except for maybe the refrigerator humming.
right? The fridge humming or the Wi-Fi router blinking in the corner. But your brain is just running a marathon at full sprint.
Yeah, the universal human experience of the sleepless night. We've all been there.
Exactly. You're just staring at the ceiling, replaying a conversation from like 3 years ago where you said something awkward,
Or you're worrying about interest rates.
or the health of your parents, or just stressing about the future in general. It's a very vulnerable, lonely feeling.
It really is. It's that moment when all our distractions just fall away and we're left with our own thoughts.
Well, welcome to today's deep dive. I'm your host, and sitting across from me is our resident expert in ancient texts. And today, we're going to look at the absolute highest stakes version of that 3 billion AM scenario imaginable.
Thanks for having me back. And yes, we are talking about the most powerful man on the planet, waking up in a cold sweat, absolutely terrified.
And unlike you or me, who, might just be a little grumpy the next day.
When this guy has a bad night, people tend to die the next morning.
Right. So we are diving deep into the narrative of Daniel chapter 2 today.
Yeah.
Now, I have to set the ground rules right up front for you listening, because this is a famous story.
Very famous.
Usually when people talk about Daniel 2, they go straight to the prophecy. The giant statue made of gold and silver and clay, the rock that smashes it.
The timeline of future empires.
Right, exactly. But our mission today is different. Based on the textual analysis in our sources,
Yeah.
we are completely skipping the statue.
Which is a great approach.
Yeah, we aren't looking at the prediction at all. We're looking at the people. We're looking at the psychological breakdown of a tyrant, a massive failure of conventional wisdom, and this really specific, surprising response to a death sentence.
I love that we're doing this because it grounds the story. It's so easy to get lost in the symbolism, the toes of iron and clay, and miss the intense human drama that actually frames it.
So where do we start?
Our source material notes this opening section specifically as a sleepless king, focusing on verses 1, 28, and 29. And it raises a fascinating point immediately. Nebuchadnezzar isn't just having a nightmare about a monster.
Right.
Daniel later reveals that the king was lying there obsessing over what would take place in the future.
So this isn't just a bad dream about showing up to school naked or falling off a cliff. This is deep-seated anxiety.
Pure, unfiltered anxiety. I mean, think about who we are dealing with here. Nebuchadnezzar is the ruler of the known world. He has absolute power. He has conquered literally everything in his path.
Yeah.
But the source makes a great point here. Absolute power often brings absolute paranoia.
Heavy is the head that wears the crown, right?
Yeah, precisely. The text asks us to consider what was actually troubling him. Was it political security? Was it his legacy? Was he worried about the stability of this massive empire he just built?
Because when you are at the top, literally everyone is a potential enemy.
Exactly. It's the classic paradox of power. Once you reach the top of the mountain, the only direction left to go is down. You have everything to lose.
And the source prompts us to turn that question around to you, the listener. What keeps you awake at night?
That's a great question.
Because usually, insomnia is a spotlight. It reveals what we treasure most. If you're worrying about money, you treasure security. If you're worrying about status, you treasure reputation.
And Nebuchadnezzar treasures control.
Control.
Yes. And he realizes in the dark, in that 3.0 a.m. silence, that despite all his armies and his massive walls, he doesn't actually have control over tomorrow.
That is a terrifying realization for a control freak. Okay, so let's unpack the morning after. Because the king doesn't just grab a coffee, pop a melatonin, and shake it off. He wakes up and makes a demand that seems, on the surface, completely insane.
He calls in the entire cabinet, if you will, the magicians, the conjurers, the sorcerers.
The local experts.
Right, these were the PhDs, the scientists, and the spiritual advisors of Babylon.
And he says, I had a dream. Tell me what it means. But then he drops the hammer.
The catch.
The huge catch. He refuses to tell them the dream first. He says, you tell me what I dreamt, and then tell me the interpretation. Now, in any other context, this is impossible.
Right, you can't interpret a text you haven't read. You can't analyze data you don't have.
And here's where the source material invites us to do a bit of linguistic detective work.
Yes, there is a bit of a controversy here regarding the translation of verses 5 and 9. It's what scholars call the did he remember debate.
I found this fascinating. Because usually I just assumed he woke up and the dream was fuzzy. Like when you wake up and know you were scared, but you can't remember why.
That is definitely one possibility. If you look at the King James Version, the translation reads, The thing is gone from me.
Meaning he literally forgot it.
Exactly. As in, I literally can't remember it, so you have to tell me. It paints him as helpless, frustrated, basically grasping at smoke. He's angry because his own mind has betrayed him.
But I'm looking at the NASB and some more modern translations here, and they translate that exact same phrase as, "The command from me is firm."
Yes.
That sounds less like memory loss and more like a threat.
It changes the vibe completely, doesn't it?
Mm.
In that version, he isn't forgetful at all. He is being incredibly shrewd. He's actively testing them. He remembers every single detail of the dream, but he's holding it back as a control variable.
He's thinking, look, if I tell you the dream, you guys are smart. You can invent any symbolic meaning you want, and I can't prove you wrong.
Right. I saw a flying cow. Oh, king, that means you will have lots of milk this year.
They can spin anything.
They can spin anything. But Nebuchadnezzar is saying, if you claim to have a supernatural connection to the gods, if you really have a hotline to the divine, you should be able to access the file directly. You should know the dream itself.
That is a serious boss move. A terrifying boss move, but a smart one. It's like a litmus test for authenticity. He's auditing his entire intelligence agency on the spot.
And the source argues that, in a way, it doesn't matter which translation you prefer. Whether he forgot it or he's withholding it, the result is the exact same. This moment exposes the total emptiness of Babylon's wisdom.
Because they can't do it.
They can't. These advisors claim to have access to the hidden world. They are on the payroll specifically for this kind of thing, and Nebuchadnezzar is just calling their bluff.
And you can feel the panic in the room. The source describes this section as buying time. The advisors, the Chaldeans, are freaking out. They keep circling back saying, just tell us the dream, O king. We can interpret it.
They are pleading for standard protocol. Please, just let us do our job the way we always do it.
And Nebuchadnezzar sees right through it.
He accuses them explicitly of trying to gain time in verses 8 through 12. He knows that if he gives them an inch, they'll spin a narrative to save their necks.
Right.
This is what we might call cold reading today, fishing for details so you can construct a plausible answer. And the king isn't having it.
Why is he so angry, though? I mean, asking someone to read your mind is objectively unreasonable. To execute people for not being telepathic seems like a tyrant throwing a tantrum.
It is unreasonable, sure, but it's totally logical from his perspective. His rage comes from the realization that he is surrounded by frauds. If they can't tell him the facts, the content of the dream, then their interpretation is worthless.
It proves that everything they've ever told him was just guesswork or flattery.
Exactly. He's realizing, wait, have you guys been lying to me about everything for the last 10 years?
Oh, this is chilling.
He's facing an existential crisis about his entire administration. He realizes his intelligence agency is just a bunch of guys guessing. And if they are guessing, his empire is built on sand. So in his mind, they deserve to die. They are utterly useless to him.
Which leads to this really weird double standard the source points out. He refuses to give the magicians any time. He's ready to kill them on the spot. But then Daniel enters the picture.
Right.
Daniel asks for time to consult his God, and the king grants it.
It is a striking contrast. Now, the scriptures don't explicitly state how much time Daniel was given. It might have just been overnight. But the king relents for him.
Why do you think that is? Did Daniel just have better charisma? Or was the king just exhausted from yelling at everyone?
It's possible it was Daniel's approach. He was respectful, calm, and prudent rather than panicky. The text says he replied with discretion and discernment. Or maybe the king was just tired of the other guy's excuses. But that pause is critical. It creates the space for the solution.
But before we get to Daniel's solution, we have to talk about how this crisis actually hits him. Because this is where the story feels incredibly unfair. The source calls this the timing problem.
Yes. This is a chronological puzzle that really changes how you view the danger Daniel was in. It makes it so much more immediate and visceral.
Okay, so verse 13 says the decree went out to kill all the wise men. That includes Daniel and his friends. But if you look back at chapter 1, the source notes that Daniel's training program, his University of Babylon degree, was supposed to last 3 years.
Right. 3 years of intensive language, literature, astronomy, and administration.
But Daniel 2.1 says this dream incident happened in the 2nd year of Nebuchadnezzar's reign.
Do the math.
They are sophomores. They haven't even graduated yet.
Exactly. They are still in grad school, so to speak. They probably weren't even in the throne room when the king was shouting at the magicians.
Right.
They aren't the high-level advisors yet. They're likely back in their dorms or studying their Akkadian grammar, totally unaware of the drama at the palace.
And suddenly, Arioch, the captain of the guard, basically the head of the Secret Service, shows up at the door with a sword.
Hey, hope your studies are going well. By the way, the king is executing everyone in your major.
That is horrifying. It really highlights the precariousness of life in Babylon. You can do everything right. Get chosen, study hard, keep your head down, eat your vegetables.
And still get swept up in a political purge you had absolutely nothing to do with.
It's the ultimate wrong place, wrong time. It shows that in a human system, especially a totalitarian one, there is no true safety. Your life hangs by a thread based on the mood of the leader.
So here is Daniel. He's young, he's still in training, and he has a death sentence hanging over his head for a failure that wasn't even his. What is the first thing he does?
He doesn't try to run. He doesn't try to argue with the guard.
No. This is the pivot point of the narrative. The source calls this the power of shared prayer. Daniel goes immediately to his house and informs Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah.
His three friends, better known to some by their Babylonian names, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego.
His community. And this is crucial. He doesn't try to be the lone hero. In most myths, the hero goes into the cave alone to find the answer, right? The genius scientist locks himself in the lab. Daniel does the exact opposite. He urges them to seek God's compassion concerning this mystery.
The source note on this is really interesting. It says he didn't involve them because the prayer of four is mathematically more powerful than the prayer of one.
Right. It's not a numbers game where you need to hit a certain quota to unlock heaven.
God isn't a vending machine that needs 4 tokens instead of 1.
Exactly. He involves them because their lives are at stake, too. This is a desperate community plea. They're in the trenches together. I think there's a profound lesson there about spiritual community in a crisis.
It's highly practical. When the world is falling apart, you don't isolate, you grab your people.
You grab the ones who are in the fire with you and you go to God together. You carry the burden collectively. If Daniel had tried to do this alone, the pressure might have crushed him, but he shares the weight.
And look at how they pray. The source highlights the basis of their plea. They don't say, God, save us because we kept the dietary laws in chapter 1, or save us because we are way smarter than these Babylonian fakers.
No. They don't appeal to their own merit at all. They don't appeal to their resume. They appeal for compassion and mercy. It heavily references Psalm 8.4, "What is man that you take thought of him?"
That's a key distinction.
It is. They know they don't deserve the answer. They are asking for a rescue. Even Daniel, who we often think of as this massive spiritual giant, later admits to the king in verse 30 that this mystery wasn't revealed to him because of any superior wisdom he possesses.
Total humility. There's no ego here. It's like, I'm not the genius, I'm just a mailman delivering the message.
Which is the exact opposite of the Babylonian system. The magicians were all about, we have the power, we have the knowledge, pay us the consultation fee. They claim to own the wisdom. Daniel starts from a place of, we have nothing, but God is merciful. It's a completely different paradigm of knowledge.
And that we carries through. This is a tiny detail I missed until I read the source notes. But in verse 36, when Daniel goes back to stand before the king.
The most intimidating moment of his life, mind you.
Right. He says, we will tell its interpretation.
It's such a subtle but powerful choice of pronouns.
Who is the we there? Is he referring to God and himself?
Yeah.
Or is he bringing his friends into the room verbally?
The text doesn't explicitly place the friends in the throne room at that moment. Physically, it seems like just Daniel. But the source speculates, and I think this is really compelling, that Daniel is refusing to take sole credit.
Okay.
He's acknowledging that this answer came to a community. He's carrying Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah with him in spirit.
He's essentially saying, this isn't my wisdom. This is the answer given to us.
Exactly. And think about the courage that takes. The king is looking at you. The reward is for you. But Daniel actively deflects the glory. He keeps the community involved. It's a complete rejection of the great man theory of history, the idea that history is shaped by a few solitary geniuses. This narrative says, no, it's shaped by faithful groups relying on God.
And that leads us to the theological anchor of the whole chapter. We've had the anxiety of the king, the failure of the experts, the death decree, and the prayer. Now we get the resolution. But the resolution isn't just, here's the dream. It's a massive statement about who is actually running the show.
Verse 2.21.
It is he who changes the times and the epochs. He removes kings and establishes kings.
I want you to pause and really think about where those words are being spoken.
In the throne room of the guy who thinks he establishes kings.
Exactly. It is an incredibly subversive thing to say right to Nebuchadnezzar's face. Nebuchadnezzar is sleepless because he thinks the weight of the world is on his shoulders. He thinks he has to secure his legacy. He thinks he has to control the future. He thinks he is the sun around which the world orbits.
And Daniel walks in and essentially says, relax. You aren't in charge. You didn't put yourself on the throne, and you won't be the one to keep yourself there.
It recontextualizes everything. The king's anxiety is based on a lie, the lie that he is sovereign. Daniel brings the truth. God is the one moving the pieces on the board. He changes the times. He sets the schedule.
It's almost like telling a highly stressed out CEO, hey, you're actually just middle management. The owner is upstairs.
That's a perfect analogy. And for some, that's terrifying. But for Daniel, and surprisingly for Nebuchadnezzar in this moment, it's actually a huge relief. If you aren't God, you don't have to carry the burden of being God.
So if we zoom out and look at the whole picture, what's the real arc here? We started with a sleepless night and a terrified tyrant who thought he had to control everything. We saw the smartest guys in the room, the experts, fail completely because they were just guessing. We saw a group of young students targeted for execution unfairly.
And the answer wasn't better politics. It wasn't a smarter argument. It wasn't a bribe. It was a community hitting their knees and acknowledging that God is the one who removes and establishes kings.
It shifts the focus entirely from human panic to divine power. Nebuchadnezzar panicked because he thought it was all up to him. Daniel had peace, even with a death sentence hanging over his head because he knew it was all up to God.
That is the big takeaway right there. It turns the sleepless night on its head. The sleeplessness comes from believing we have to hold the world together. The rest comes from knowing he already is.
And I think that leads us to the final provocative thought our source material leaves us with. It's a question that I think we all need to sit with, especially given the state of the world right now.
It's the question that really bridges the gap between ancient Babylon and today.
Lay it on us.
If it is true that God removes kings and establishes kings, if he's truly sovereign over history itself, how should that reshape the way you view today's world events? When you scroll through the news, when you see political upheavals, when you look at the economy, or even your own uncertain future, does that truth bring you panic? Or does it bring you the sleep that Nebuchadnezzar couldn't find?
That is definitely something worth thinking about tonight, maybe even at 3 a.m. Thanks for diving deep with us.
It was a pleasure.